Hello and welcome. Today I have a very special guest joining me, and for sports fans, my guest has the voice of legends with a physical persona that's equally unique. For our folks to the north who follow the NBA, you know my guest loves to get that garbage out of here. From the time he leaves his courtside seat and exits the Scotiabank Arena, my guest is met by throngs of fans, autograph seekers, and onlookers, and he is more than happy to stop and say, "Hello." Well, folks, if you don't know who I'm talking about by now, you may have to flip the rock that you've been living under. It is a pleasure and honor to introduce to you today the great color commentator for the Toronto Raptors, Mr. Jack Armstrong. Jack, thanks for being here.
Victor, a pleasure to be here and really excited. You do a pretty good job with the get that garbage out of here.
That's what I was going to ask. I was going to say, how am I as an impression?
You're in the top 10%, so you're doing okay. I get a lot of bad imitations. You are quite good, so you have a talent, that's for sure.
Well, that's good to hear. Well, Jack, I am very excited you're here, and there's no doubt that you live in an exciting lifestyle. You know, you've been pictured with Hollywood royalty. You are friends, and you've mingled with some of sports' most storied athletes. I mean, you're a legitimate jet setter. You fly in the team jet from Toronto to LA to Miami, and that's just a typical work week for you. So, there's no doubt you live an exciting life, but what I really want to know is how did you feel that beautiful night in San Francisco when the clock struck 0 and the Raptors were crowned NBA champions for the first time?
It's funny. When you do something like this for a living and you're on the air and you're in the midst of the moment, it's kind of surreal. You literally have to pinch yourself and say, is this really happening? But more importantly, you got that red light on you. And you don't have time to reflect because you have the entire nation of Canada listening to your voice, and you're on camera sometimes, and you're describing the final seconds of the game. You're talking about the trophy presentation, all the different things, and you're trying to capture the narrative of historically what the moment means. Mm-hmm. So you're so focused on your work, you really don't have time yet. And literally, we were on the air for probably an hour and a half after the game, doing interviews with the owners and the players and the coaches and executives. And so you spend so much time, you're working, that you don't really have time to reflect. I guess the first time I actually reflected and said, holy you know what, was when we got back over the bridge from Oracle Arena into San Francisco, and the Raptors had a big party literally right on the water facing the Bay Bridge. And that was really cool to finally, and you walk in and you're running to the owners and the players and the coaches and everybody, and the look of joy and exuberation in their faces was just remarkable. And now it finally, a little bit begins to sink in, and it's great. I mean, and the thing that was amazing, I think it was that night in Game 6, and my broadcast partner, Matt Devlin, said it, there were 59 unofficial watch parties across Canada.
Wow.
So it was like, our ratings were, like Olympic-like ratings, like when Canada plays in the gold medal game in hockey or something like that. It was just insane, the level of interest and passion and enthusiasm. And, in your age group, for kids in Canada, that was their first title. The Blue Jays won the World Series in 1992-93. For this generation of young people, it was their first championship in one of the 4 major sports. So it just captivated a nation. It was just really, really cool experience.
And obviously, Jack, you spoke about the different watch parties around Canada, and you spoke how the viewers just skyrocketed through this whole playoff. So Canada has been mostly a hockey country for the majority of time. I mean, they have multiple professional teams in multiple different cities, as well as multiple Stanley Cup wins, although not recently, in Canada. Do you think that this past year of success with the Raptors, that basketball can once again resonate with its country of origin? And do you think that newfound success in Canada can last if the Raptors do suffer a couple of bad seasons?
Oh, I definitely think it can. It's the fastest growing sport in Canada. The other sport is soccer, and you're a big soccer guy. Mm-hmm. But it's amazing. And here's the interesting thing about Canada. If you go to a Toronto Raptor game, and obviously I go to all 30 markets in the NBA, by far Toronto is the most culturally diverse city I've ever been in. And the audience at a Raptor game, it's like literally being at the United Nations. So there's a new Canada. Canada is very welcoming to immigration. It's a very liberal society. And you look at these new Canadians from all over the world, when they come to Canada, and they're coming by the thousands on a yearly basis, they don't come to Canada dreaming of a hockey puck and a hockey stick. One of the world's sports, soccer and basketball. And to me, so we have a whole new young audience of Canadians that comes with a great passion for our sport. So to me, I think I think the best is yet to come. We're already number 2 in the world in NBA players behind the United States. There are countless players, whether it be young ladies and young guys, playing college basketball in the United States. So the growth of the sport, you'll go down a street anywhere in Canada. I was at a golf tournament in Halifax back in July, and Nathan McKinnon and Sidney Crosby were there, and I had a nice chat with them. But I was out for a run in the morning before the golf tournament, and everywhere I ran, there were basketball baskets in people's driveways. And when you look at that, years ago, you didn't see that in Canada. It was everyone had the hockey goal out front or out on the street or in the driveway. So it's really taken off. So I think there's a tremendous foundation there. And like anything else, if you lose for a few years, you'll lose some of the fair weather fans. But in my opinion, basketball is here to stay. I think Toronto's a top 5 market in the NBA, and the resources that are there. We're a unique franchise because of the 30 franchises in the NBA, there's only one that all 82 games and as well as the playoffs are on national TV in Canada. So, like in a few weeks, I'm speaking at an event in Vancouver. I was at an event in Halifax. I spoke at an event in all over so it's a national brand. And whereas hockey is a regional brand in Canada. You'll have Calgary Flame fans and Vancouver Canuck fans and Winnipeg Jet fans, Leaf fans. But in Toronto, with the Raptors and the Toronto Blue Jays, the only 2 teams, they're the only team in their sport. It's a national brand, so it's really cool. And to be an ambassador for that and to help grow the game is a lot of fun.
Now, obviously, Jack, you've been an ambassador of the game for Canada. You were Brooklyn born and raised, though. You were an assistant coach at Fordham, and you had the chance to come to Western New York through a head coaching position at Niagara University. But now, as you said, you spend a lot of your time in Toronto and all over Canada with the Raptors. At this point, what does Buffalo and Western New York mean to you?
Buffalo means a ton to me. And the reason is Buffalo reminds me so much, Victor, of the Brooklyn I grew up in. Brooklyn now is like Disneyland. It's gentrified, a lot of yuppies. I don't know if that's even a word anymore. But a lot of, it's very trendy. A lot of people in their 20s and 30s, cool places to eat and all that. The Brooklyn I grew up in was more of a, it had soul. People, different neighborhoods, very eclectic, but nonetheless, it had soul. It was a togetherness about it. And when people ask me about Buffalo, and I'm a Buffalo Bills season ticket holder, we were longtime Buffalo Sabres season ticket holders, and when I have an off Sunday, I'm at a Bills game. I love it. I read the Buffalo News every day. I love living in Western New York because the people are real. They're authentic. There's no pretension. People are kind and friendly. And there's just such a heartbeat here. And there's such a great sense of community and pride. 2 years ago, when the Bills made the playoffs for the first time, and they played Jacksonville, I was in New York. We were playing the Brooklyn Nets on a Monday night. And a friend of mine from Toronto is a nutty Buffalo Bill fan. So I said, hey man, I got some buddies from Buffalo. We're going to the Bills bar in Manhattan. We're staying in Manhattan, and we're going to go to the Bills bar. Well, we were at the bar at 9 o'clock in the morning for a 1 o'clock kickoff, and the place was jammed. And these are all transplants from Buffalo that now live in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and they all converged on this bar, and they had to open up 4 other different bars in Manhattan to to handle all the Bills fans. So to me, it's not just the Bills. I find Buffalo to be a really warm, friendly, welcoming place. Is it provincial? Is it parochial at times? It's kind of like a smaller version of Boston.
Okay.
But the fans here are educated, they're passionate, they care, they're loyal through thick and thin. And having coached here for 10 years, and now being with the Raptors for 21 years, but I've been living in Western New York now for 31 years. I love it. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad I live here. I'm so glad I have the opportunity to still live here, and I enjoy every bit of it. And to me, driving over the bridge, going into Canada, I don't look at it like I'm going into another country. It's like going from New York to New Jersey, or going from New York to Connecticut. I don't even, it doesn't really register. And I just think this region, and maybe it's the cold winters and all that, but I'm a big believer in this, Victor. I think too often, and it's a huge mistake, you look right now at the Tampa Bay Rays and the Miami Marlins. Major League Baseball in Florida isn't working. Mm-hmm. But years ago, the Buffalo Bisons were doing everything possible to try to prove to Major League Baseball that baseball could work here. I'm a firm believer that it would have.
Yeah.
But the challenge was Major League Baseball made the mistake of this. They were worried about disposable income and demographics, mm-hmm. and all these different things that bean counters think about. But too often they don't look into the soul of a community, mm-hmm. and a heartbeat of a community. So Buffalo people, if it's Charlie from Cheektowaga, Louie from Lackawanna, whatever it may be, they're spending their last penny of whatever disposable income they might have on the Bills, on the Sabres, on whatever they are going to support, and they're going to do it passionately. Whereas I don't think a lot of places, so when I think of places that have soul, that have character, that have a heartbeat, I think of Buffalo, I think of Philadelphia and Boston and New York. Those people, they give a damn. The give a damn meter is really high. Mm-hmm. I use another word, but this is a family show. So to me, I just think it's a great community to live. I feel like I have 2 lives, which is really cool. When I'm here, I'm kind of like the ex-coach. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a low-key lifestyle. I can kind of just blend in. Whereas when I cross the border, it's a whole different thing because you're kind of a personality there. Yeah. So I feel like I have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, it's the city of good neighbors. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, you're right. You can really feel the heartbeat, especially athletically, through the city and through the people. So yeah, it's a very just unique city in that sense. Definitely. Yeah, Jack, you are known for having a great rapport with players and coaches that you cover both during and after their time with the Raptors. Do you think you can attribute that to your time as a coach, or the coach as your fans call you? Also, your time growing up in Brooklyn, where basketball was almost a way of life for you and to so many others.
I would say that's a big help. I think when you grow up in a city, basketball is I guess it gives you street cred a little bit. I think it's people, they hear your accent. Hey, you're from the city. You understand ball. You understand it. You get it. You have an appreciation for what it's all about. There's no doubt my coaching background that I think that really helped me a lot. I think I can connect with coaches because I have empathy for what they do, and I understand it's a hard job. It's a thankless job. I always joke, peacock today, feather duster tomorrow. 1 minute you're a genius, mm-hmm. and suddenly overnight for some reason you took stupid pills and you don't know what you're doing now,
Yeah.
which I think is absolutely ridiculous. But that's the fickle nature of coaching.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same for athletes. I think athletes are it's a high profile, high pressure, you're well compensated, but you better produce because there's so many people behind them,
Yeah.
come behind you trying to take your job. So it's super competitive. So I really respect what they do. And I think today's athlete, more than ever, is probably the most dedicated athlete. Now, in some ways, it's because the money's so big and the infrastructure that athletes have around them now with their agent and their chef and their workout guy and all the different things. But you know what? They're a business. I always look at it, our 15 guys are 15 corporations walking into, there's a lot of different interests, and they have investments and different things going on. There's a lot of pressure to produce and to stay at a high level. So these guys sacrifice. You don't get to this level. When I look at these guys, you don't get to that level without being truly committed and all in. And the guys that aren't are out.
Exactly.
And I feel comfortable that if I have to critique and make a commentary that maybe isn't as complimentary as sometimes people would like, I feel like it comes from a place of genuine passion and education and preparation, that if I do critique something, I have a theory, I always try to go 98-2. 98% of the time, I'm saying things that are effusive and positive in their praise. And at the same time, in order to have distinct credibility, the other 2%, I got to occasionally say, hey, no, this ain't right. This guy's not hustling, or that wasn't a smart play, or I'm not sure about that adjustment that was just made. And I try to first guess rather than second guess. So what I try to do is I'll say, well, if I were coaching, this is what I think I would do. But then I also immediately say, but I'm an unemployed coach. I use humor in it as well to kind of, put the pin in the balloon a little bit, just to kind of make it more of a fun thing than anything really intense and critical. But I think it's important. I think overwhelmingly, and there are people with thin skin, and there are people that get hypersensitive sometimes. But overwhelmingly, in my 21 years in the NBA, as well as my time for, 16, 17 years doing college basketball for ESPN, Fox, MSG, all the different networks, I think people understand when you're fair. You're imperfect. I'm perfectly imperfect, and so there'll be a time that I'll make a mistake.
Yeah.
But overwhelmingly, I feel like I'm coming from a good place, and I'm prepared, and I feel confident that overwhelmingly I know what I'm talking about, and my opinion is at least in the ballpark. I always say our goal is not only to be in the right church, but to get in the right pew. So my job is to try to not only be in the right place, I want to make sure I'm in the right pew. The angle I take I'm barking up the right tree. And I think athletes overwhelmingly, and coaches and executives overwhelmingly know that you're coming from a good place, and you're fair and you're honest. And if you do that, I think you have nothing to apologize for.
And you mentioned it, how with the NBA now, it's basically like the players are 15 different corporations coming in there. You've been with in the game so long. Do you notice that difference on how you deal with the players? On, all right, this guy, I have to deal with these players different than I deal with these players, or you just deal with different players differently the way that you used to? So let's say back in the 90s, you would deal with somebody differently than you do today, just because of the businesses they have and just the shoe deals, the clothing lines, everything like that.
It's a good question. I don't think I could coach today like I coached in 1998, my last year of coaching. I don't think I could. I mean, I'm a father of 3 sons. Obviously, you know my sons. I had to deal with them differently than maybe how I might have raised them in 1978 or 1988. The world's different. I think we're in a very politically correct world, and overwhelmingly that's a good thing. I think we have to respect people's boundaries, and we have to respect that. So we're in the people business. So I think I chat now with athletes differently. I think I chat with my own kids differently than maybe I did when I first started. And I think you do a better job as a parent with your. I have 3 boys. I probably did a better job with my 3rd son than I did with my 1st son. And you get better every time you do it. And the same thing as a coach. I was a better coach in 1998 when I got fired than I was when I got hired as a head coach in 1989. Or when I first started in coaching in the late 70s, early 80s. You get better. You learn. So I think there's no question that you look around pro sports today. I think coaches know this now. I'm a big believer the best coaches in our game create the best partnerships with their athlete. So if I'm a coach right now in the NBA and I'm making $5 million a year, you know, I probably have 9 guys, 10 guys making more money than me. So if I think I'm going to come in and this is going to be a dictatorship, I'm out, not them.
Yeah.
Because there's more money sunk into them than sunk into me. I'm replaceable. So I think the best coaches today create a partnership at the basketball point with the top 3-4 players on the team. I gotta coach the team through you if you're one of my top 3-4 guys. And I feel the same way in hockey when you have like 20 guys. I think in football, it's a lot more difficult. I think football coaches, in my opinion, are the most organized. They're amazing. They could easily be CEOs of companies. I feel like as a basketball coach, as much as I was a coach, I was a CEO because I had a lot of people working for me. But when you're a football coach, you've got hundreds upon hundreds of people that in some way, shape, or form you got to touch, and you got to inspire, and you got to lead. And I think as a coach in any sport, you have to really do a good job, because we're in the people business, of connecting with people on an emotional level to their soul and inspire them. And here's another thing. I think guys have to genuinely like you now. I think in the past, you know, a coach could walk in the room and say, hey, you know what? I'm the coach, and you're going to do it the way I want to do it. I think it's the same thing if you're the CEO of a company now, or whatever it may be. I think employees today, I think athletes today, I think people today have choices. And if I'm going to play for you or if I'm going to work for you, I got to feel a connection to you. So not only do I have to respect you, there's got to be a little bit of like in there too. I mean, I still think overwhelmingly respect is what matters.
Yeah.
But I think you got to create things with your people that make a difference. And I think in the job that I'm in now, I'm in the relationships-based business. And at the same time, I think a lot of it with dealing, to your point, which is a really good one, it's a different era now. And I was in coaching when that was changing. And quite frankly, there were times I did not do a good job with it, where I went old school on guys that were new school. And then as I went along, I got to a point where I got better at it. And I'll say this, last thing I'll say to this point, because I think it's really important. The great Chuck Daly, Hall of Fame coach, he said, if you're going to be really good, he goes, I'm a people coach. He goes, X's and O's, you know, it's not the X's and O's, it's the Jimmys and Joes, right? He goes, X's and O's, yeah, I'm good at that. He goes, but I'm a great people coach. He goes, I touch every one of them every day. You walk up to a guy, hey, how's your wife doing? Or how's your kids doing? And this one, hey, how was that concert last night? Or boom, how was that movie? And hey, how's your ankle doing? Hey, how's your mom doing? How's your dad? You know, but you connect a few minutes a day with each guy, and they know, that you care. You know their names, and you know their kids' names, and their wife's name, their girlfriend, this, that, the other thing. And you have a genuine interest in them. And I really think, and I've talked to tons of athletes about it, and I think to me, when they know you give a damn about them as a person, they'll run through the wall for you. And I think that's the essence of today's coaching. And to really be a great leader, you've got to inspire particularly the top guys, because they help you get your message across. If they're buying into you, the lesser players that are just hanging on for dear life, they're falling in line because the top guys fell in line.
Exactly. Well, Jack, there's no doubt that you've touched a lot of people through your commentary. You've been with the Raptors for the majority of their existence now. You've obviously experienced a lot of highs and a lot of lows, some really great free agent signings and some tough ones. Do you think that you have, at this point, a favorite moment, other than this past NBA championship season, a favorite moment or a favorite game, even a favorite broadcast that sticks out to you today that you can say, hey, this was an incredible moment, or this was an incredible game and I loved it?
Wow. That's a good one. I would say a few things. Number one, the first time the Raptors won a playoff series, it was in 2001 in Madison Square Garden, city I grew up in, and beat the Knicks. And it was a best of 5 series at that time. And to just the sheer joy of that moment, I'll never forget it. The excitement of it, and winning on the road. I would say probably this group of guys, well, there's only a few left, but the Raptors have been in the playoffs 6 years in a row. The first playoff series was against the Brooklyn Nets, again, my hometown. But it was the first time the Raptors had people outside the building, and they called it Jurassic Park or Maple Leaf Square, whatever it's called. And just thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people in all sorts of lousy weather out supporting their team. And I called it, Pat Riley has a great term. He calls it the innocent climb. When you're bad and now you start to become good, and the excitement of that. You look at the Bills getting in the playoffs against Jacksonville a few years ago. That's that innocent climb, and sometimes it's the unexpected, or it's maybe your first time. But I'll never forget that Brooklyn series, because I was like, man, we were down for a while. There's a lot of people that have been in hiding that now are coming out of hiding. And we have a lot of people that really love it.
Yeah.
And now it's really taken off from there. And then I would just, a few years ago, the Raptors' first time in the Eastern Conference Finals, beat Miami in the East semis in Game 7 at home. And we're about to play the Cavs in the East Finals for the first time. And the utter jubilation and joy, I'll never forget. It was a Sunday afternoon. We beat the Heat. And I walked out of the building, and I had these 2 fans come up to me, and they were crying. I'm like, what are you crying about? Is that something wrong? No, what do you mean? This is my greatest moment as a Raptor fan. And I'm like, wow, that's like really cool. So that always stands out to me. And actually, it was just an amazing moment to call it on television. I actually won an award for it, which was so much fun. But to see the look on people's faces, so to me, those are things that ring out, that really make a difference. And it's funny, talking about Buffalo, I was at a bar with a bunch of guys. It was New Year's Eve, and I'll never forget, the Bills beat the Miami Dolphins, and then the Bengals, led by Dalton, right? They beat the Baltimore Ravens, and the Bills make the playoffs for the first time. I don't know, was it 17 years or something like that?
Yeah.
And grown men and women crying in a bar. I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah.
But it was, fathers and sons, grandfathers and sons and grandsons. Like it was like, this is nuts. But that's what sport does to people. And to me, just being able to have the best view in the house of it and be able to talk about it, and to, there's a lot of cold nights in, January, February, where you're on the road doing a game in Indiana or Minneapolis or Detroit or whatever, and you don't realize that people are home on a Tuesday night and it's snowing out and it's cold, and you've got their undivided attention. Yeah. And I know we live in a world where people are super busy and they're distracted, but they pay attention. And it's pretty cool responsibility to have on a nightly basis, let alone the highlights. Just the nightly basis to have that, it's a lot of fun.
And were you in the building the night that Kobe put up 81 on Jalen Rose?
Actually, I wasn't.
Okay.
I was in studio that night back in Toronto.
Okay.
And I don't know how I would have described. I was doing a studio that night, so I don't know how I would have called that game. I probably would have been pretty critical. And the coach, Sam Mitchell, who I work with now, he does television.
Yeah.
And I always bust his chops about, why didn't you double Kobe? Get the ball out of the damn guy's hands.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? You played him single coverage almost the whole night.
Yeah.
And I've poked and prodded Sam about it and had a good time with him. But he might have been pretty ticked if I called the game, because I would have said, where's the double team? But I would have first guessed. So that was Kobe. Kobe was an assassin.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's interesting. When you meet people that have it, you know it. I met Kobe Bryant for the first time. I'm going to say he was like 12 or 13 years old. We were recruiting a kid who was playing in an open gym in Philadelphia at St. Joseph's University. And I'm hanging out in the gym watching this pickup game. And I'm like, damn, who's this kid? Who's this kid on the court? And they say to me, oh, that's Jelly Bean's son. Well, Joe Jelly Bean Bryant, his father played in the NBA, then played for a long time in Italy. That's where Kobe grew up, in Italy, as a kid. And I knew his father because his father, Jelly Bean Bryant, was an assistant at LaSalle. I was at Niagara. They were in our conference. And, so I knew his father. So I'm like, damn, this kid's good. So after they're all done playing, the kid that we were recruiting played well. But I'm like, this guy's unbelievable. So I introduced myself to him, and I said, look, I know your father, Jelly Bean, Kobe Bryant, nice kid. And I said, look, I just want you to know, you got a scholarship to Niagara if North Carolina or Duke or Kansas or Kentucky don't call you.
Yeah.
I said, I don't think you're going to have a problem. I think all four of those schools and 150, 200 others are going to be offering you as well. But I just want you to know that if things don't work out, you got a home at Niagara. So years later, I see Kobe, and I told him the story. He just broke down laughing. But you knew it. There are certain guys that jump off the page at you, and you say, that gal's got it. That guy's got it. There's just something. It could be a singer, could be a piano player. You could see a piece of artwork in a gallery and go, whoa,
yeah,
there's something special there. And most of the time, it has to grow and evolve. But there are certain times you see somebody, like the first time I saw LeBron James, I was like, damn. I saw Kevin Garnett, in an open gym. And I'm sitting next to Jerry Tarkanian, the coach at UNLV that was recruiting him. And I talk about LeBron, Kobe, and Kevin Garnett. All three guys didn't play an ounce of college basketball. These guys were like special at 17 years old. Like you knew it, that they had it. So it's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. You don't have to feel too bad about recruiting him because obviously you didn't take anybody else's offer either. So you don't have to feel too bad about it.
You're right about that.
Yeah. Jack, you have a beautiful family. You have a wonderful house in Western New York. You were recognized by New York State as basketball's Division I Coach of the Year while at Niagara University. You've been the on-air color commentator for the past 2 decades for the Toronto Raptors on TSN and NBA TV Canada, as well as being a top college basketball insider. Most would say Jack has reached the top of the mountain. What does it look like up there, and where do you go from here?
Wow. Good. Oh boy. But I never feel that way. Mm-hmm. I really don't. I feel like I think my background, where I come from, I grew up poor. I slept in the same bed as my brother Brendan, 4 kids. My dad died when I was 7. My mom's 92. She's my hero. I come from humble roots. And I joked with you earlier, but peacock today, feather dusted tomorrow. And I've always been a believer. Maybe it's a bad way to look at things, but you're a half step away from the gutter. It can change overnight, and you got to be. You can never let your guard down. You got to work your you-know-what off all the time. And I take pride in that. I've been a successful basketball coach. I've been a failure as a coach as well. Success, I've read it one time, success and failure are true imposters. You never get too high, never get too low. And so the view at the top, I don't know. I'm just climbing. I'm trying like crazy to keep climbing. I'm trying like crazy to keep being good at what I do, and I hope I have my fastball. And when I lose my fastball a little bit, I hope I'm experienced enough to be able to use my off-speed pitch a little more, and my curveball, and paint the corners a little bit and be a little more crafty. And also I want to be at the point where when I truly lose my fastball, I'm man enough to say I have and step away. I think the worst thing you could do is stay too long, also the most important thing to me is, and I say this all the time, there is a dramatic difference between being successful and being significant. And, to me, when I was a grade school coach in Brooklyn, and this guy who now lives in Boston, married with 4 kids, and he's doing very well in banking industry. And every time I'm in Boston, we go for lunch. But when he was probably 13, 14 years old, he got in a serious car accident. So I would go by the house as much as I could just to drop in and see him and hang out and BS and talk ball and all that. And I'll never forget, his dad gave me a pen and pencil set. And it's still in my top drawer of my desk at home in my den. And it's a pen and pencil set, big deal. But the pen and pencil set isn't really the thing. It's when I open up the box, there's a note inside. And basically his dad said to me, he was talking to me, I was a young man, I was wanting to coach, and he said, Jack, always remember, a man can achieve great wealth, stature, and position in society, and yet fail as a person. We all know people like that. So to me, people might say, well, you're very successful. Well, what is success? The car you drive, the amount of money you make, the house you live in, all that garbage, it doesn't mean anything. What's your legacy in life? I think that's significance. What things have you done as a man, as a person in society to help people? That's what it's about. With no strings attached. That you're there. My kids went to Canisius High School here in Buffalo, and I love the Jesuit motto of man for others. Can you be a man for others? Can you put your own self-interest on the back burner and care about the person across from you? Because it's a two-way street. So I think probably to me, the most important thing to me is that I hope someone could say, hey, he's a good man. And because I don't want to let my mother down, because that's how she raised me, and that's how she raised her 3 older boys. And to me, that's the most important thing. I want to be a good son. I want to be a good brother. And now in my life that I'm in now, I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good father. I want to be a good uncle. Or I want to be a good colleague. Whatever it may be, that stuff matters because, that's the game of life. So the game of being a TV personality or a rock star or a successful corporate titan, whatever that may be. That stuff comes and goes. It's people always remember whether you had their back when they needed you, and that to me is what it's about.
And I'm sure that outlook on life has definitely helped you get to where you are today, Jack. And your work, your commentary, your enthusiasm has delighted fans near and far.
Well, thank you.
Who you are as a man has been what's most important to me, and I know that sentiment would be stated by so many others. Whether it's through public recognition or behind the scenes, you have been the coach, the motivator, the inspiration, and the lifeline behind so many people. Jack, thank you for being here today, and thank you for all that you do.
Well, it's my honor and pleasure to be here with you, Victor, and you knocked it out of the park. So I was sitting here today with you. I thought a little bit of Kobe and those guys that you have it, and congratulations, you're going to do great.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
All righty.
Victor, I tell you what, you did great.